Nickelodeon. Ever since its creation in 1979, the network has been associated with some of the highest quality children's sitcoms of all time. In the 90s, there was The Adventures of Pete and Pete, Kenan and Kel, and Clarissa Explains It All. In the 2000s, there was Drake and Josh, Zoe 101, and iCarly. And even in the 2010s and beyond, they continued to put out content that would generate the loudest of laughs from children of all ages and backgrounds. No matter the genre, no matter the actors and said content, Nickelodeon just knew how to make TV shows that would not only reach the hearts of children, but put the network in a league of their own, towering over the rest of the kids' entertainment channels out there, and making their name synonymous with the word excellence. Well, that is, except for one show. Bucket and Skinner's Epic Adventures is a live-action Nickelodeon sitcom airing in the early 2010s. Strange era for Nickelodeon, because while shows like Victorious and Big Time Rush totally made sense for that time, they were also just kind of trying stuff they don't even usually be doing. Super Ninjas, The Troop, Haunted Hathaways. In the 2010s, you were either a normal sitcom with music elements or a sitcom with some sort of gimmick. And Bucket and Skinner was kind of the latter. Debuting in 2011, the show follows the adventures of best friends of Bucket and Skinner. Whether they're at school, the beach, or that shop that they visit frequently, I guess, the boys are tethered by their bond of their most favorite thing in the world, surfboarding. Throughout the series, we see them get into many different shenanigans and hijinks, all of course on their never-ending quest of awesomeness. I don't know how I'm gonna get through this video. Unless you were avidly watching every single Nick show around this time, there actually is a pretty decent chance you know nothing about the show, because as we'll discuss later, it's pretty obvious that Nick had almost zero confidence in it. And for good reason too, because, well, to be blunt, no Emily, it's really bad. Like, I'm being so serious when I say this, I want you to believe me. This is probably the worst sitcom I've ever seen. And I've seen a lot of bad ones, okay? But this one is just, like, I know people tend to be blind to certain shows because of nostalgia, and I get it. But no, this one, not even nostalgia can save this one. As you guys know, for the last few months, I have been in what I call my Zeke and Luther era, where I've been covering not only that show, but also some of the movies that the cast of it have been in. To conclude this absolute banger of an era, I thought it was only fitting that I talk about the show that was kind of a ripoff of Zeke and Luther. Like, I've thought this since the show came out. Bucket and Skinner is totally a great value version of Zeke and Luther. But even without that being the case, this show is just horrible, and I genuinely think it's Nickelodeon's worst sitcom. So, what better thing to do than spend, like, I don't know, a half hour or so talking about it? That seems appropriate, does it not? Join me, Mr. Nostalgia, as I, unfortunately, cover the 2011 Nickelodeon original series, Bucket and Skinner's Epic Adventures.
July 1st.
Ready to make history?
Some call them brilliant. Some call them manly.
Never calling you a kid again.
Glad we cleared that up.
We call them Bucket and Skinner.
Loving it.
And they're coming to Nick in the most epic new series on television.
You two boneheads are in the genius class?
Affirmative.
Bucket and Skinner's Epic Adventures. Friday, July 1st at 8. Only on Nick.
Skinner, screwdriver. The screwdriver has a name, Bucket. It's Luther.
See, I told you it was a ripoff. Bucket and Skinner's Epic Adventures premiered on July 1st, 2011. Right off the bat, Nick tried their hardest to make people care about this by not only airing an after rerun of I Party with Victorious, but also airing not one, but 2 episodes as part of its premiere. Clearly, neither attempts mattered in the end, but I respect them for trying, I guess. The show was created by Jamie McLaughlin and Boyce Bulgari, who, although didn't have much experience in kids TV prior to this, would go on to create shows like the previously mentioned Haunted Hathaways and Coop and Cammy Ask the World. One name that you guys might recognize though is Thomas W. Lynch, who serves as a producer on the series. And the reason why I say you might know his name is because he actually has a pretty rich history with shows like this. Lynch's name is attached to shows like The Journey of Alan Strange, 100 D's for Eddie McDowd, Make It Pop, The Troop, and some of my personal favorites like The Romeo Show, which I never realized until now was just called Romeo, and surprisingly Class of 3000, one of the most underrated Cartoon Network cartoons. This show was actually announced the same day as 4 other shows back in 2010. Could you take a guess on what the other shows were? I'll give you 10 seconds and a hint. One of them was a preschool show. Okay, time's up. Power Rangers, Samurai, Super Ninjas, House of Anubis, with the preschool show being Bubble Guppies. And somehow that became the most successful series of them all. Whoa, hold on, wait a minute. House of Anubis had how many episodes? Yeah, I'm never reviewing that one. Bucket of Skinner began production that December, with it originally being scheduled for a February 2011 release, but obviously it ended up getting pushed to the summertime. Bucket and Skinner are played by Taylor Gray and Dylan Lane, respectively. Prior to this, Taylor Gray wasn't in many projects. You could even say that this show was more or less the start of his career, though he was in this one film called The Take, apparently with Tyrese Marshall Gibson. If anything positive came from this show, though, is the fact that it launched Taylor's career, because after this, he appeared in the theatrical basketball film Thunderstruck, which I want to review one day, and later he got the role of Ezra in Star Wars Rebels, not to mention he was most recently in that SNL movie. As for Dylan Lane, he doesn't have a Wikipedia page. Y'all did him dirty. Shame. Pretty sure Bucket and Skinner was his first role as well though, but similar to Taylor, he'd go on to appear in a bunch of other stuff like Good Luck Charlie, Fred the Show, and Texas Rising, where he starred alongside, I kid you not, Adam Hicks from Zeke and Luther. This is crazy. You got real Luther and fake Luther standing right beside each other. I believe they said that these guys have been friends, best friends that is, since first grade, which although it was one of those cliche buddy duo sitcom tropes, it's one that I never really get tired of, because having a friendship last that long is really something that's rare and special. It's a shame, I kinda hate both of them. You know, the show is described as having them be on the quest for awesomeness or whatever, and I still don't really know what that means exactly. I guess you could say that a lot of the plots have them trying to reach or accomplish something that would add more meaning or status in their life. They're trying to, at times, upgrade aspects of their lives, whether it's involving school or girls or financial status, or even just small exciting moments in general that grants them gratification, albeit being temporary. I think maybe that's what they mean by epic adventures, but truly they could have and should have just called it Bucket and Skinner. I think both names are weird enough to stand out on their own without anything else needed in the title. Ironically, the one facet of their lives that gets very little attention is surfing, the thing that the entire show's aesthetic is based on. And I guess that's where it differs from Zeke and Luther, because while Zeke and Luther's main quest was to become the world's best skaters, and you have multiple skating scenes almost every episode, surfing is honestly more like something they reference that they did in either the beginning or end of an episode. Very few times is it actually a plot point. And I get it, because, you know, surfing is significantly harder to show on screen, especially on a kid's sitcom budget, than skating is. But with that being the case, it makes you wonder why they even went with surfing to begin with. Character-wise, there isn't much going for Bucket and Skinner. I'd even argue that the 4 other series regulars are a lot stronger in terms of personality traits, and overall just having things about them stand out. Bucket and Skinner are both idiots, though Skinner takes the word a whole new level. And I guess I'll give credit where credit is due. Bucket is much closer to being that one guy you know that's low-key stupid, but can still function on his own as a human being, and when put in a sticky situation, won't make things worse thanks to his general dumbness, like Kel, for example. He actually kind of reminds me a lot of Season 1 Zeke, like early Season 1 Zeke, before they figured out what they were going to do with him. He's pretty clueless on how the world around him works, and in order to accomplish what he wants, he uses schemes that lack common sense and a general understanding of the concept of consequences. He pushes logic to the side and doesn't really consider how others might feel about certain things he does. And I don't think he does this because he's a jerk. I just think he's stupid. The first episode of the series does a great job in showing this, but it also does a really bad job in making me like Bucket as a character. I'll touch on this more in a few, but the most consistent thing about his character is the fact that he has a crush on this girl named Kelly. Like an insane crush.
Look at you two in high school now. So cute.
Hey, Belly. Kelly!
Yeah, that brother's starving.
And so in the first episode of the show, he wants to run for class president to impress her, but he realized that he'll never win thanks to him not being very popular. So in order to add more buzz around his name, he comes up with the rumor that he's dating Kelly and starts spreading it around school. And I gotta say, not only is this, for lack of better words, absolutely insane, but the way that he goes about actually getting that rumor out there is even crazier.
I'm writing a country song for music class, and I'm thinking of the title, Pick You Up at 7, Honey. Thoughts?
Yeah, I guess that title works.
Sup? Kelly, pick you up at 7, honey?
Like I said, works for me, cowboy.
Yeah, that brother's starving.
This should not have been my first introduction to the character. Your first episode is when you're supposed to show viewers that this character was worth rooting for 22 minutes. But this episode, if anything, did the opposite. While the show does improve on his character slightly as it goes on, I do think Bucket is a really weak protagonist, even for a kid's show. I mean, almost every single episode, this dude is just thirsting for this Kelly girl. It's so annoying. Episode 1, Bucket runs for class president to impress Kelly. Episode 2, Bucket and Skinner sneak into a party so Bucket can dance with Kelly. Episode 5, Bucket tries to sabotage Kelly's date because he's jealous of the guy she likes, which, to be fair, he was also under the impression that he was a jerk, but still. Episode 6, Bucket wants to be cast in the school play so he can kiss Kelly. Episode 7, Bucket writes a love song about Kelly, and this doesn't stop even when Kelly gets a boyfriend, one that actually appears in numerous episodes and becomes a recurring character. And it gets really annoying. We've seen similar tropes and stuff like, say, Pair of Kings with Brady and Michaela, but even that little one-sided relationship rarely took up entire episode plots. This show, for whatever reason, just wants to portray Bucket as a simp every single time. Like, bro, if you don't pick up a surfboard or something, do people still say simp? Skinner, on the other hand, is an idiot. Yeah, like that's it. You know, there are certain levels to dumb characters in kids sitcoms. You got guys like Drake or Zach who aren't really idiots. They just don't care about most things to actually learn about them. Then you got like London and PJ who were definitely dumb, but at the very least had legitimate things that they were passionate about, like London with fashion and PJ with music and even cooking. If you try to talk to them about anything else, you're probably not going to get too far. Then there's like the complete idiot tier. Like, y'all remember Paisley from Ant Farm? She was so stupid to the point where, like, I'm actually surprised she hasn't accidentally unalived herself. Like, I could totally see her sticking a fork in an electrical outlet or wanting to make toast while bathing. Yeah, that's kind of where Skinner operates. Every word that comes out of Skinner's mouth is something dumb, and I hate these kinds of characters with a passion because it's not fun, it's not funny. I don't know, I just don't feel comfortable laughing at these kinds of characters. I know it's not real, but still, I feel bad for them sometimes.
Dang it, why won't my stupid locker open? Because that's not your locker.
Oh, dude, you just saved me a half hour.
Are you okay?
Oh, I'm better than okay. I haven't been this excited since I invented toast.
B+, getting better. What's your say?
No grade given. C school nurse. It's not an F. This baby's going on the fridge.
Wow, fireworks, releasing of doves, a life-size aloe cake.
Oh, I call the ears. I know, that cake sounds awesome. I'll eat his feet, I don't care.
Most of the time, Skinner doesn't really have his own plots. Generally, Bucket is the lead of the episode, with Skinner being given something dumb to do alongside him. There are some exceptions, of course, but you get the idea. Some characters are lovable idiots, and while I do feel like that's what they wanted to go for in this case, it rarely comes across that way for me. It's hard for me to say that I straight up hate him, even though I think I did earlier in the video, because at the end of the day, he is a pretty positive character. He's typically always happy and he's a nice guy. A character like this in small doses isn't that bad, but when it becomes too much for me is the fact that he receives second billing in this show. His name is literally in the title, and so we get a good dose of him every single episode. The one interesting thing they do with this character is they actually revealed that he's high-key a really good surfer, like way better than Bucket, and probably the best in town. But the thing is, thanks to his personal beliefs instilled in him by his family members, he doesn't surf competitively. Which is honestly the most fascinating thing about this show. It's the only thing ever done to any of these characters to add an extra layer to them. And they reveal it in one episode and never acknowledge it again. Ashley Argota from True Jackson VP is Kelly Peckinpah. Fundamentally, I think Kelly is one of the only good characters in this show. The only issue is she's rarely given anything to do besides be Bucket's love interest. She's a nice girl, good student, and works at the local surf shop that the boys frequently hang out in. And she's a grade older than them, I believe, but still hangs out around them. And honestly, I think this is where she's at her best. Sometimes plots involving her and Bucket can be frustrating because this dude makes it painfully obvious that he likes her, but she either chooses to ignore it or is legitimately oblivious to it. In which case, she might be as dumb as Skinner.
Okay, gotta go. I'm meeting Blake.
Blake who? A guy, Blake? Not that I care. Blake who? I got something to say, and I don't care if the whole world hears it.
Okay.
Kelly Peckinpah, I feel sleepy and very gassy.
However, when the show treats her, Bucket, and Skinner as a trio, that's when you get not just some of the best moments from her character, but also some of the best moments of the show. An example of this comes from this one episode where the three of them all get detention for relatively dumb reasons. This is an issue though because they all wanted to go surfing. So Kelly, who's allergic to kiwis, eats one and has an allergic reaction in order to end detention early for her and the guys. Plus, there are other times throughout the show where she catches Bucket in the middle of a scheme, and instead of letting him crash and burn, he helps him out, though sometimes she uses this as an opportunity to teach him a lesson. When she's not demoted to being just a crush of the main character, she can actually be pretty cool. Though this is only true some of the time, because a lot of the side plots that have her at the lead, although not being straight up horrible or anything, can be pretty lackluster. It just depends who she's paired with. Ironically, the person she's paired with probably the least is her own sister, Piper. Piper is played by Tiffany Espenson, who would later appear in stuff like Kirby Buckets and even Spider-Man Homecoming. She's more or less the Ginger or Megan of the series, the resourceful, smart, but really mean little girl. But I think in some cases the most accurate comparison would be Kyra from Kenan and Kel. And I say this because, like Kyra, Piper has a crush on one of the two leads, in this case Skinner, making him the only person that she's nice to. Aside from that though, she doesn't add much new to these kind of characters, so if you've seen Drake and Josh or even Zeke and Luther, you know what to expect. Despite this though, she's surprisingly my favorite character and easily the most consistent. Her mean-spirited one-liners are probably some of the best in the show, and you'd think a character like that would get boring after a while, but she's honestly one of the few halfway decent things about the series. Plus, Tiffany does a really good job of playing the character.
You could have talked to me about this instead of putting on some huge production.
Blake, this isn't a huge production.
I'm contaminated! It's too late for me, Kel! Save yourself! What happened? I missed it? I'm still getting paid, right?
There's also the owner of the surf shop, Three Pieces, played by George Back. Out of all the people in the series, he's definitely the one that gets the least amount of attention. He's actually the only so-called series regular to not appear in every episode, being absent from 9 of the 26. He's Bucket's uncle and apparently once upon a time was a really good surfer, but retired once he got into an accident that split his board into 3 pieces, hence his name. Okay. Feels like a pretty useless piece of character information, but alright. I really don't think he's a necessary character, at least not to the extent that he's actually in the show. There are some episodes that go out of their way to include him by giving him his own plots, and I just don't really get why. I feel like although he's the owner of the surf shop, you don't really need to see him that much. Like how often do we see Drake and Josh hang out at the movie theater without seeing Helen? Or Zeke and Luther hang out at Don's without actually seeing Don? I feel like he should have been a recurring character, maybe appearing in every, I don't know, like 3 to 5 episodes. Especially since he's just not that good of a character. I don't even feel like going into it, honestly. This clip kind of explains everything.
I've got a date! Woohoo! Celebratory cartwheel!
I never found you funny. I never found you entertaining. I never found you smart. I just found you annoying.
The last and worst series regular in the show is Aloe, played by Glenn McEwen. So basically, you guys remember Kojo from Zeke and Luther? He's basically him, but not nearly as funny. Matter of fact, this guy is just annoying and I absolutely hate seeing him on my screen. He's incredibly self-absorbed, even in some ways that Kojo wasn't. And it doesn't help that this dude is rich, so he can just buy whatever he wants. Plus, he has his own professional glazer, this dude named Finn. On top of that, he's super popular and looks down on anyone else that, well, isn't. Specifically Bucket and Skinner. So he's always looking for opportunities to humiliate them. A character like this, in theory, isn't always a bad thing. As I said earlier, in some ways he's similar to Kojo, who I really liked. But the problem is all in the execution. Kojo, at least to start off the series, was just naturally cool. Aloe is just infuriating with it though, and it doesn't help that he has a really punchable face, no offense to the actor. Like, y'all remember in Euphoria, when Kendrick was like, "I hate the way that you walk, the way that you talk, I hate the way that you dress." That's me, but with Aloe. And I mean it, like, I don't like the way this dude talks either.
Yo, Kels, you hear the news? Aloe put on his dancing shoes. I turned my head, saw you looking so fine. Said to myself, it's robot time.
No bars.
None.
Not a bar.
Yo, call me Willy Wonka, cause I got me some golden tickets.
I want to kill you right now.
Everything about him just irks me. I gotta say, the one thing I will give credit to, and this isn't even a character thing, it's more of an actor thing, Glenn is a really talented dude, and I'm not even talking about his acting. Throughout the show, he does a lot of crazy flips and stunts that at first you think, oh, that's a stunt double. But then you realize it's not. He's legitimately doing this stuff. He's a trained gymnast in real life and even landed a Star Wars commercial in 2005 thanks to his ability to flip.
And choose your destiny like Anakin Skywalker.
He chose the dark side. What if I do too?
And considering his background in gymnastics, it's no wonder why they have him doing all this crazy stuff in the show, even when it's completely unnecessary. Now, don't get me wrong, I still hate this character and I think he's a complete narcissist, but the dude playing him is very talented. Overall, the characters in the show are pretty mediocre and for the most part are void of anything to make them stand out from other characters of similar molds. A few of them are even worse than the average kids TV show character, making this one of the many reasons why the show is one of the very worst from Nickelodeon's history. I need a commercial break because I just can't talk about the show any longer.
You're watching Bucket and Skinner's Epic Adventures. We'll be right back on Nick. Now back to Bucket and Skinner's Epic Adventures on Nick.
So we already went over the characters and the pros/cons of each of them, but obviously there's a lot more wrong with the show than just that. You know, there are some kid shows where you can just tell that the creators genuinely cared about nearly every facet while making it. We already know how I feel about Zeke and Luther, but even without using that as an example, there are plenty of other shows I can use to back that up. Scott Fellows is an example of this, the creator of Ned's Declassified, Big Time Rush, and 100 Things to Do Before High School. All of these shows had a level of care that you can just feel and sense while watching it. He wasn't just making these shows for a quick buck, and in Big Time Rush's case, he easily could have, considering I'm pretty sure he was literally asked to create a music show in order to compete with Disney. You can just tell that he took his time with the setup of the series, the characters, and the overall environment that they lived in. And the same applies for all of his other shows as well. There are obviously still cliche tropes and characters as you'd expect, but he still managed to put his own spin on them to at the very least make them unique to the series. All of those shows felt like labors of love. Obviously, he was still, getting paid to make those shows, but he actually cared about what he was putting out to make sure that he was providing kids with quality content. I'm not going to say that the creators of Bucket and Skinner didn't care while making the show, but I'm definitely going to question if they did. All of the best children's sitcoms have a good amount of either charm or heart. I know some of y'all don't like when I make basketball references, but hear me out. I just saw OKC shoot 7 for 35 from 3 and still managed to beat the Grizzlies to close out their series. And they were able to do that because of their great defense. If the shots aren't falling, at least you'd have that to fall back on. In this case, it being funny or having jokes is offense or shooting threes. If the jokes just aren't landing, at the very least, you might be able to get by having charm and heart, which in this illustration would be defense. You guys get what I mean? The jokes in Bucket and Skinner, 9 times out of 10, do not land. And there's basically zero charm or heart for the show to fall back on, thus making it a chore to get through. Was that a good illustration? I hope it was. My point is that this show felt like something that was made just because Nick needed another sitcom to air, perhaps to take True Jackson VP's spot. Which, now that I think about it, might actually be true, considering Ashley Argota went directly from that show to this one. When I watch this show, sometimes I can't help but ask myself, was this a show that the creators wanted to make or had to make? Y'all remember that episode of SpongeBob where they start mass producing Krabby Patties and SpongeBob is like, where's the love? That's what I feel like when watching this show. And look, to the creators' credit, although I haven't seen much of the other shows that they've done, I wouldn't be surprised if they improved as time went on. Coop and Cammy specifically has a really interesting premise that I wouldn't actually mind at least checking out. But Bucket and Skinner just feels like a character of a bunch of other similar shows. The jokes in the show just feel like something you'd see in a parody of a sitcom. Eye-rolling, dumb humor that I don't even know would make kids laugh. I don't mean to sound mean, but it's hard for me to believe that such thought was put into these jokes. Though I will say, sometimes, every now and then, they would do a joke that's just so stupid, I kind of have to let out a little chuckle.
You're right. We can't miss out on seeing one of the most important musical groups of our time. Sensitive artists who are literally changing the world through their craft. I know. No one is better than STINKBUTT.
What doesn't help with the mostly bad jokes in this show is the fact that, as I mentioned earlier, for the most part, these were Dylan and Taylor's first real lead acting roles, and at times you can kind of tell. There are moments where I find their acting to be below average, even for just being stars of a kids sitcom. The way that they deliver their lines at times, especially when more feeling than usual is involved, comes across as flat to me. Another part of why this show is one of Nick's worst is that the episodes generally just aren't good. Like, that sounds like a, well, duh kind of thing, but just hear me out. The storylines that they choose, at least for the A-plots, aren't even always that bad. That's the crazy thing. The stories, although not anything special generally, can actually be turned into good and enjoyable watches. Honestly, most of the things I see happen on this show, I could see happening on Kenan and Kel. But see, Kenan and Kel were naturally just funny people that could carry almost any script. Not to mention that the supporting cast was significantly better. But the problem is this show's way of executing the plots had to be super dumbed down thanks to both of the main characters lacking common sense. It just gets to a point where you're not having fun while watching this show. Really, you can only go so far with the dumb character shtick. Even the previously mentioned Kenan and Kel got repetitive after a while. If a character's only trait is that they're stupid, especially if it's going to be a title character, you're putting a stop to how far your show can go. You can't have both lead characters act dumb. We've seen what happens when dumb characters get shows, and it doesn't end well. And really, that's what this show feels like. It feels like you took two dumb characters from an already existing show and gave them their own series. The characters of Bucket and Skinner probably would have been fine in a show like How to Rock or Victorious, where there's already mad characters in it. But the way that they made these characters makes it almost impossible to come up with compelling stories for them. Now, that being said, there are some things that I think the show did well. Some things. For starters, the theme song kind of bangs. I'm not gonna lie. Let's see how much I can play without getting copyright claimed. Oh well, there goes that. But most importantly, and I mentioned this earlier, the trio of Bucket, Skinner, and Kelly is legitimately pretty decent. Mostly due to the fact that now you have a normal person in that dynamic. The stories don't have to stoop too low when she's heavily involved. The absolute best episode of the show is called Epic Cuffs. Yes, every episode started with the word epic. It was one of those shows. And in that episode, thanks to a magic trick gone wrong, the three are handcuffed together with seemingly no way out. This is an issue because, aside from it making using the bathroom really hard, Kelly has a date at her boyfriend's parents' house, and so they come up with a Muppet-esque plan to keep the date going by hiding the boys in what Kelly called a native ceremonial chongo robe. But in the entire second half of the episode, they try to make this whole situation work, and yeah, it doesn't. And it's pretty amusing. I understand why they didn't have Kelly spend more time with the boys, but this trio seriously had potential. If they kept doing it, I would have actually enjoyed more than like 2 episodes. There is also one thing that I liked in this show that I wish more kid sitcoms did. There is a 2-part special, which included guest stars like Cody Simpson and iCarly's Jeanette McCurdy. While they were more so delegated to the B plot, the A plot focused on Bucket and Skinner trying to go to a concert but accidentally ending up at a military facility where they encounter robots and Matt Shively from True Jackson VP, I guess. And like, the episode itself wasn't great, but what I did like was what it was trying to do. You see, although this two-parter, for whatever reason, aired in the middle of the season, they were actually intended to be and filmed as the season 1 finale. And I always thought that more kids shows should do these big event episodes, or at least somewhat meaningful episodes to end the season. Some obviously did, but I always hated when they'd end seasons on random episodes. One of the things that I liked about this episode is that it actually ended with Kelly breaking up with her boyfriend and even dancing with Bucket. Even though it might not have meant much in the long run, at the very least, this episode kind of wrapped up part of Bucket's, if you want to call it, story. Like, yeah, the whole dancing part to me isn't really a big deal, but that accompanied with the fact that she also broke up with her boyfriend, to me at least makes me think that season 2, had it actually happened, was going to expand upon that. We all know Bucket was never going to end up with Kelly full time, and the actual execution of any potential love storyline, even if it was more so of a triangle with a new character, probably wouldn't have been good. But, as they say, to me, it was the thought that counted. They actually wanted to make this show's season finale mean something, which you don't see much of in a lot of shows like this. I will give the show that, and maybe a couple other things, but that's it. I do think somewhere, deep down, there's an at the very least decent kid show there. But once they committed to making storylines with the characters that they did and the manner that they did, that basically killed everything. And trust me, Nickelodeon noticed. Now let's be real. Nickelodeon is kind of known for giving their less than popular shows pretty bad send-offs, but generally this only applied to Nicktoons like Harvey Beaks or Rise of the TMNT. It's unfortunately pretty common within the network. But like, what ended up happening to Bucket and Skinner was actually insane. For starters, after the first 13 episodes aired on Nickelodeon, there was a 5-month hiatus where Nick just wasn't airing the show. They just straight up pulled it from the release schedule. Finally, March 2012 rolls around and they start airing episodes again. But only 4, with the last episode airing in June 2012. And that would be the very last episode to air on Nickelodeon, because after another 6-month hiatus, the remaining episodes aired on Teen Nick from December 2012 to May 2013. Now you might be wondering why such a thing would happen, and the answer is simple. Nobody watched this show. Now it's funny, when you look at the show's ratings from a current perspective, you'd probably think that it did pretty well. Every single episode got at least 1 million views, some even gaining 2 million. But you have to keep in mind that this was 2011 and cable was a lot different and more popular than it is now. Streaming wasn't what it is today. Back then, you really had to watch an episode live as it came on, and if you missed it, you better make sure you catch the rerun. So while these numbers would be impressive by today's standards, when you compare it to the other shows on the network, this show was easily doing the worst. Comparing it to shows like iCarly, Victorious, or BTR just wouldn't be fair, obviously, so I figured it would be better to compare it to another show that was closer in popularity, Super Ninjas. The pilot episode of Super Ninjas debuted to 2.5 million views, while Bucket and Skinner debuted to only 1.9. And this is with it airing after a big iCarly special. Comparing the two shows' ratings together, it's obvious that Super Ninjas clearly outperformed Bucket and Skinner in both ratings and reception. It had a stronger premiere, better average viewership, and enough momentum to earn a second season, something that Bucket and Skinner obviously never achieved. And when you watch the show, it's pretty obvious why. Even setting quality aside, although surfing was supposed to be, I guess, maybe like the gimmick of the show, it clearly wasn't one enticing enough to attract young viewers. Ninjas are cool. Kids like ninjas. Like, there's a reason why Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles has been around for like 40 years. And I'm not saying that kids don't like surfing, but the average 8-year-old is probably going to prefer ninjas over surfing, 9 times out of 10. And I, a grown man, would too, to be honest. Truthfully, there was nothing about Bucket and Skinner that would really make kids want to watch it. You gotta remember that Drake and Josh was still being aired on Nickelodeon via reruns, Zack and Cody was still constantly in rotation as well. Kids had their fair share of the whole duo comedy thing. And considering Bucket and Skinner added nothing new to the table, it was probably just ignored, and rightfully so. The show would go on to burn off its episodes on Teen Nick with little advertising, and that was it. Bucket and Skinner's epic adventures was no more. A pretty unremarkable ending to a pretty unremarkable series.
You're watching Bucket and Skinner's Epic Adventures. We'll be right back on Nick. Now back to Bucket and Skinner's Epic Adventures on Nick.
That's what you get for trying to be Zeke and Luther, though, you know what I'm saying? That does make me want to address something, though. Do I actually think that Nickelodeon looked at Zeke and Luther and said, ooh, we should make one of those? I'm gonna say not really, but it's not impossible. I mean, hey, there's been rumors that the two networks have kind of used the others' shows as inspiration in the past. Ant Farm does have a pretty similar premise to Victorious, and some have argued in the past that Sunny with a Chance was Disney's answer to iCarly. So while there is still a possibility that the similarities between Bucket and Skinner and Zeke and Luther are coincidences, I don't think it would be smart to completely rule out the idea that the former was inspired by the latter. Regardless, it doesn't really matter in the long run. Both shows are pretty irrelevant today, and I really only did this video because I thought it would be a funny way to wrap up my Zeke and Luther era. Speaking of which, yeah, this is the end of said era. An era I started with reviews of the theatrical movies the cast has been in, leading up to the 7-hour video, of course. After that, we reviewed a couple DCOMs, and now we're here, ending it all with the review of the show that potentially was a ripoff of it. I thought it was a pretty fitting way to end this era. I couldn't think of a better way, honestly. And now we're off to the next chapter. Not only is this the end of an era, but this is also the end of my channel. Now I'm playing, let me chill. Jokes aside, this is the end of what I call season 2 of the channel. Season 3 will start with a video immediately after this. Don't expect any major changes, though I will be making alterations to my background like usual. As for Bucket and Skinner, you guys know my thoughts on it at this point, so the only thing left to do now is ask what you guys think of the show, if you even remember it. Let me know in the comments below. As always, subscribe if you're new, and don't forget to hit that like button. I'm Miss Nostalgia, and I'm out for now. Peace.